Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Talent Talks podcast, the show where we talk with talented people from all fields. I'm your host, Paul Drake Verge, the co founder of Talent Trellis, where we build top notch customer support and trust and safety teams for SaaS companies. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Stacey Swift, an accomplished customer experience leader and SaaS expert. Stacey's career spans over 16 years, and she's currently the Director of Customer Support Operations at Cornerstone On Demand. Before this, she held prominent roles at Jungle Scout. I love Jungle Scout, by the way, I used to use it all the time, wherein she built and led a global support team, ensuring best in class customer support around the clock. Stacey is known for her analytical prowess and project management skills, which have consistently driven performance metrics above industry benchmarks. She's not just a leader in customer support, but an advocate for quality assurance and a champion of continuous improvement. Join us as we delve into Stacey's insight on creating world-class support teams, enhancing the customer support journey, and navigating the complexities of the e-commerce and SaaS industries. Stacey, how are you doing today?
I'm doing well. Thank you for the warm welcome, Paul. I'm excited to be here and talk about some of my experiences.
Me as well. And from some of our past conversations, this is why I knew I had to have you on because I remember you had such really good insights. And I think that would be super, super useful for people in this space specifically. But besides that introduction, I would love for you to, in your own words, describe kind of what you do.
Yeah. So recently my role has shifted a little bit. In previous lives and at Jungle Scout, I was the director of customer support, which means managing all aspects of customer support from setting the KPIs and ensuring quality, delivering excellent customer support. Now, as you mentioned, I'm the director of global support operations at Cornerstone. It's slightly different as in that I focus more on efficiency and effectiveness of the customer support function. So rather than directly supporting the end user, my customer is the customer support team. So I do whatever I can to ensure that their processes are optimized, strategic planning, team leadership, um, anything and everything to make sure they are capable of delivering excellent service and maintaining high customer satisfaction.
Okay, I understand. So just so I kind of understand correctly, right now you are kind of managing the ecosystem of other customer support reps, making sure that they're happy, making sure that they're cared for, and giving them all the tools they need to support the end user. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
Perfect. And let's just define some key terms before we dive into it for anyone who's not really familiar with this. So, what does experience mean? What's the difference between customer support and customer success?
The difference between support and success. Support is more about solving problems as they come up, where customer success is a bit more about ensuring that customers are getting the best value from the service or product and sort of ensuring their ongoing satisfaction, but also their long term success using your product.
Oh, okay. So one of them is like putting out fires. The other one is in hopes of increasing the customer lifetime value from like a business perspective and
Yeah,
increasing
you
their
can look at
happiness
it.
and satisfaction.
Yeah, you can look at it sort of to put it simply success is proactive and support is often reactive.
Got it. Got it. And what about customer experience as a whole? Does that encompass both of these two umbrella terms?
Oh, yeah. Um, Customer experience as a whole, I think, has to be the holistic interaction that that starts with the beginning of the customer journey. So, from their initial brand awareness to the purchase process, post purchase support, the success team working with them to ensure that their product is set up correctly. Customer experience is the entirety of the customer journey.
So the customer experience team, I assume, would work extremely closely with potentially even sales team, potentially even marketing teams to ensure that the experience on the web page or the experience with whatever they buy is all kind of fluid, right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So how do you I assume that's going to come across or not come across, I assume that's going to create a lot of conflict like interdepartmentally.
Could.
Like trying because the marketing team wants to focus on specific benchmarks, the sales team wants another
Mhm.
thing. So how would you navigate that kind of situation?
Yeah. So A lot of conversations, a lot of working interdepartmentally. I've seen this come up time and time again in the SaaS industry, for example. Um, Something may be slightly confusing on your purchase page with your pricing or your offer. And when the customer makes the purchase and they come in, they realize they didn't get what they were looking for. Or they maybe they one common thing that I've noticed in the SaaS industry is customers often get confused between a monthly subscription fee and an annual subscription fee. So they'll sign up for a lower price one, thinking they're going to pay much lower per month, but then they're hit with a hundreds of dollars because they've paid for the year. And so trying to find that balance where you can still ensure that the customer has the right information without impacting revenue or registrations, and keeping the customer happy
Um,
post purchase. Yeah.
That makes total sense because, yeah, I noticed there's so many times where, like, like even the simple thing of that little thing on the website is switched from annual and you see the price in
Hmm.
annual,
Hmm.
which is a marketing tactic. But then there's the customer experience side that comes into it and be like,
Yeah.
hey, I just bought this. I didn't mean it. So it's like, so I guess like the trade off between revenue and dissatisfied customers that's where you kind of balance it, right?
Yeah, you definitely have to strike that balance. And there are things that we've done and tested in the past in different organizations. But you can do things like even if it's just having an arrow to point to the slider that toggles between monthly and annual can help that without reducing registration.
I never even thought about that, but that makes total sense. Now that I picture it,
Hmm.
that would be like a conflict between the two. That's interesting.
Hmm.
Stacey, you've had a very extensive career. What initially drew you to this field, and how have your early experiences shaped your approach to customer experience or customer service?
Yeah. So I wasn't actually drawn to the field for just for working in customer support. I actually fell into it. I was a single mom and needed some additional income. So I started part time in customer support and absolutely fell in love with it. Prior to that, I was an analyst at an automotive manufacturing plant. I was not in customer support, customer service at all. Um, let's see what experiences shaped. When I started at Jungle Scout, I had several years of customer support under my belt. And when I started there, I knew nothing. I knew nothing about the product. And at that time, I would just like to say we had multiple products. We did eventually roll them all into the primary parent product. But I came in on the financial analytics tool, which is very analytical, a lot of numbers, a lot of Amazon reports. Um, and let me just say, I came to Jungle Scout very early, so there weren't that many employees there. So I tell you that because it's relevant, because there were no work instructions, there were no SOPs, there was no training. There was one training video. It was in Spanish. I don't speak Spanish. Um, and 3 days after I started, the entire company went to Bangkok for a retreat. And so we had something like a 13-hour time difference, and I had these tickets coming in and customers that were confused and needed help, and I didn't know the product. And so um, I learned to be very adaptable and very scrappy,
Hmm.
and I worked very closely um, with other departments when I had customer issues to sort of figure out, how does the product interact on the back end, and how is it retrieving information from the API, and how is it translating that for the customer. Um, so I guess to like summarize this being in this situation, I had to be very hands on and I had to have a problem solving mindset. And so, again, it forced me to think in more of a proactive way. How can I find this solution? How can I help this customer? And it made me more customer focused because I had those same struggles and the same issues and the same confusion that they did early on. So I was able to better serve them, better build out processes for them.
Oh.
Mhm.
This is actually something that I'm recently noticing, and I want to know what your perspective on it is. Like, sometimes I find that almost knowing nothing about customer support going into it is actually a huge advantage. And what I mean by that is, like, because someone has a lot of experience working in the customer support industry for different companies, those companies have a very strict and set process. And over time, I feel like that really ingrains within your mind. So when you kind of move over to a new company, which does things significantly differently, there's a clash between like what you think is right and what the company wants to do, and that kind of creates friction. Well, what do you think
Mhm.
about that? Do you find
Um,
that's kind of like in your experience, even when you're hiring customer support reps or for some of your other positions?
um, Paul, you're gonna have to repeat the question. I'm sorry.
I was saying that when hiring, let's say a customer rep or a support rep, would is it advantageous for them to come in like very open-minded and not knowing too much, like kind of you did into Jungle Scout, or would you prefer them have tons of experience in the customer support industry? Like, which one of them would say is easier to train and adapt to the new systems processes, the new company's processes?
I think probably someone with experience is easier to train. What I said previously, it helped to shape my experiences, and I firmly believe in order to support your customer well, you have to know your product well. You have to know it inside and out. That being said, if you haven't had customer support experience, not only is it very difficult to come in and learn perhaps a very intricate, very difficult SaaS product, but you have to know how hard it is to work in this industry. You're talking to people all day, every single day, which in and of itself can be cumbersome, so to speak. But then you're dealing with customers all the time that are maybe very confused, which can make people very upset. Or like I mentioned about, people are very passionate about money. So if they've had an experience where they thought they were purchasing one thing and their credit card bill has a very different number on it, they're very upset, and you are taking the full brunt of that when you're talking with them. So experience, I think, is very necessary just for the customer support field, period, full stop. But then there are lots of tools, especially if you're working in a remote environment. A lot of customer support is remote, so you need that experience or you're going to come in way behind the game, because now you have to learn a very difficult, very intricate, possibly product on top of how do I communicate? How do I stay in the loop? How do I stay engaged? Where do I get information using all of these remote tools? And someone with no experience can become very overwhelmed very quickly.
That makes sense. Okay, yeah,
Mm.
I think what you said there does kind of resonate. What I was thinking, why I asked the question was like I was thinking, I was under the impression if like you're very used to working in a different kind of customer support experience, like you've learned things a very certain way, and then like
Oh,
if
I
you're coming to
see.
a new company who's brand new and they do things so much differently, I feel like that would almost sometimes be a disadvantage because then you're like trying to your mind is clashing between the way they do things between the way that you've learned to do things. That's kind of what I
Yeah,
meant.
yeah, I see what you're saying. That is very difficult because I've experienced that in my career as well. When you get used to, I've worked remotely since 2010, many years, and each company that I've worked for does things very differently. So in that sense, yeah, it probably would be easier to train someone to bring someone into the company who hadn't had that prior experience, because muscle memory is a real thing, so to speak, and it's hard to break old habits and teach new ones, whereas it's much easier to form a brand new habit. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. Moldable minds, they say. Actually,
yeah,
no one
yeah.
says that. I made that up. Uh,
I love it.
um, who so who were some of your actually before this, I do want to ask, how did you build up or that resilience, or how do you not take this home with you? Because I imagine like you're taking on so much, like you're basically taking on the customer stress and
Mhm.
converting it into your own. And you have to channel it away one way or the other. Or if you're handling a customer support team, they're the ones who kind of have to manage that. So
Mhm.
how do you emotionally manage like this field, which historically does have a very high churn rate?
Yeah. So personally, when I'm interacting all day, every day with customers, I'm going to be completely transparent with you. I have to get up and walk away. Sometimes customers come in and they're attacking and abusive, and sometimes you do have to just take a very deep breath and walk away. Fortunately, a lot of the support that my teams have done has been via email. So you do have a second to take that breath, take a moment to compose yourself and figure out what you're going to say. But the way that I like to look at it is two different ways. I love a good challenge. And so when a customer comes in and they're very upset, it's my mission to turn it around. And so even though I am the recipient of all of that anger or angst or confusion or frustration or whatever, if I can turn it around, that's an excellent feeling for me to walk away from that interaction. And it's like the stress just melts away because it was positive for both of us in the end. And I feel like, yeah, I got that done. And I've talked to my team members about that too. That's a really good feeling. But then another thing, as I mentioned, customer support is often remote, and so you're at home or you're maybe in a shared workspace or whatever, and so you can disconnect for a moment. You can walk away, you can take that minute, you can grab a walk, grab a water, talk to a friend, and then come back to it. It's a little more difficult when the customer support or service is face to face. You have to maintain that composure and you can't let your feelings show on your face. But same thing, just learning that most of the anger, most of the frustration from customers just comes from they need something. They need help. It's not you. It's not, they're not attacking you personally. They're just frustrated and they need help and they're trying to find it and their emotions are coming out. So just keeping in mind that whatever they say, whatever they do is not personally towards you.
I made a connection from something you said earlier, and I just want to bring this up. I don't know if you thought about this, but you said that you first fell into the field of customer support because you were a single mother. Do you
Mhm.
think that helped you, those skills of parenting a child translated over to customer support? Because it seems to,
100%.
because you're kind of always dealing with an angry toddler one way or
Mhm.
the other, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, yeah, 100%. And it's funny that you mentioned that because it is like that sometimes, especially when you have um, someone new to your product or new to in my case in this example e-commerce and they do have money involved and they are very passionate. Money's tied to emotion, and the best way to bring that down is to break it down. And so you just very clearly articulate step by step what the problem is, what the solution is, how we're going to fix it, or whatever the case may be. But if you break it down as if you were teaching a toddler to tie their shoe, I mean, I don't mean to say it that way, but if you do, it's very clear, and often that will alleviate some of the frustration.
Well, I think also if we kind of zoom out and think about it, like, because I'm definitely been jealous of this. Like, if there's a charge that overspent or overtook, like I am very upset.
Yeah,
And I feel like that's almost, and it's so much easier because if you're talking to someone online or you're talking to someone there, like you're almost like venting in one way or the other. So it is actually quite similar to
it is.
like how a child would vent a little bit. So, and it's funny that you said you're like, okay, well, let's figure out what's happening. Let's walk them through it, and then you both feel better after solve the situation. So
Yeah, absolutely. Mm,
transferable skills.
I love it.
At Jungle Scout, you built a global support team that provided 24/7 support. So, what are the key elements to successfully managing a global team and maintaining these high standards throughout different time zones?
Yeah. So I would start off by saying that ensuring the happiness of my teams is just as high a priority for me as making sure our customers are happy. So it, 100% top of the list on both sides actually is clear communication. When you're working with a 24/7 remote global team, flexibility is also key, and cultural sensitivity. So with flexibility, what I mean, as a leader in a global team, you have to be the most flexible. So you want to have regular check-ins with all your team members, but you need to do it at a time that's convenient for them. And so for me, I had team members in the Philippines, in China, in New Zealand, in Poland, all over Costa Rica, Mexico, you name it.
And
So
Pakistan.
yeah, and Pakistan, yeah. So that could mean meeting very early in the morning or late in the evening. And so that is imperative for global teams. The onus should not be on them to move their schedule around. That's up to the leadership. And then with that, I mentioned regular check-ins, and that means having those touch points with them to see, how are you doing? What's blocking you? What struggles are you having? And then also, culturally, is just being mindful and being aware and respecting the diversity of cultures on your team. Because when you have a global team, different religions, different holidays, different beliefs, and it's important to stay abreast of all of that so that the team members feel accepted, they feel connected, they feel a part of something bigger. And then maintaining high standards, you asked about that. Onboarding and training with follow up coaching is imperative. Um, Quality assurance reviews. We didn't have a quality program for a long time at Jungle Scout, and we built one, a scrappy program internally, and we did wind up using a solution later, but we improved our customer satisfaction scores from 94 to 99% in just over 6 months with
Wow.
quality reviews and coaching. So that's an absolute must. And then implementing clear performance metrics. Your team members need to know. They want to know what good looks like. What do I need to achieve? What target am I trying to hit? And then hold them accountable and find out what the issues are if they're not meeting their targets. I think those are the key elements, I think.
Oh, okay. So just to kind of summarize, be very flexible, work on their time
Hmm.
zones, work
Hmm.
with them because they're all over. Be very respecting of beliefs, check
Hmm.
in regularly, make them feel appreciated,
Hmm.
and set the high standards, make it extremely, extremely clear to them like what the standards are to hit, and
Yeah.
then keep them accountable by checking in and making sure like, hey, why are you not hitting the standard? What's going on?
Yeah, absolutely.
What are some of the challenges that you've had working with global teams? Or is there anything that came up that was it like anything in particular that was particularly difficult, and like how did you deal with that?
I mean, the first thing that pops in my mind is meeting times. Not necessarily for these one on one check ins, but in a remote team, I feel that it's very important to foster a sense of belonging, camaraderie. It can be very lonely, if you feel like you're alone out there on your island. And so we like to have team events, we like to have team meetings, and it's very difficult to find a time that works for everyone. And often, one, two, or a handful of people could be excluded from this event or that. So the way that we handled that is, we just have to have two sessions. So if we're having a quarterly happy hour event, we have to have one, in the AM and one in the PM, and not everyone can attend. Everyone, you're welcome to if you want to come in the middle of your evening or night, but that's the way that we worked around those. Same thing with like a team all hands. That was an issue. And then I mean, I'm not going to lie. We had some times where team members weren't so accepting of other team members, or maybe would have a negative view or a negative attitude for the way another team member learns or the way that they respond. And so, having those conversations with those team members to explain, not everyone is the same. Not everyone learns at the same pace. Not everyone learns the same way. It's not a one size fits all kind of thing, and you have to adapt for those cultural differences.
And I totally agree with what you say, and I think that's something that's not much spoken about in this industry. But if you are working remote, especially if you're like alone most of the time, that loneliness factor is absolutely huge because like
Hmm.
when you're really lonely, it's really hard to focus, and
It
you're just
is.
kind of looking for distractions. And so I think that's exactly why even at Talent Trellis, like we because we did start out with having people work kind of remote all around the country, but then we brought them all in office, and we just saw that like the happiness went up, having them
Yes.
together went up, having like
Mhm.
just feeding them and giving them nice food and making sure that they're happy. Like if people feel cared for and appreciated, they will work so hard. And it's like
They will.
they're happy with you, you're happy with them, and you guys get to go out and and like that bond is so so important because if you don't feel that bond between the company, between the organization, you don't move as like a unit. You know what I mean?
Hmm.
You're very scattered, and it's very hard to collect that with time.
Agreed. And let's be honest, that translates into your support service. You have happy teams, they provide better support because they're happy to be there, they're happy to be a part of this team and helping the customer. Whereas if they're disconnected or they're not, they might be frustrated, or it definitely translate into your support. Mm.
And it's interesting too because now I'm thinking about it. It's like from the customer side, they're usually coming to you because they have a complaint or there's an issue, right? So if your
Mhm.
team is happy and they're smiling and they feel the sense of camaraderie, it's not like one person is taking the brunt of it all. It's like dissipated amongst the team, if that makes
Yeah,
sense,
we're in it
right? Because
together.
everyone's happy. We're in it
Yeah,
together. Yeah, because
absolutely.
it's so true.
Mhm.
And I know it's difficult with online. Sure, you could have meetings and all this, but there's nothing really that beats that in-person touch, you know?
There's not. Mm-mm.
Whether that be like domestically or if you do choose outsourcing, I think it's important to choose an outsourcing company that does have that sense of camaraderie and they have offices where they work together because it definitely translates over to support 100%.
For sure. It does.
I should make a, s- I need to get a stat on this. Like, what's the difference in CSAT score? That would be an interesting case study.
Yeah, I think so too.
Um, in your opinion, what is the most overlooked aspect of delivering exceptional customer support?
Personalization, making personal connections too. Um, I want to emphasize that with AI on the horizon and then in everybody's mind, but personalization. So um, let me give you an example. So first, I want to say excellent customer support comes from those interactions. So, for example, if you're a longtime customer and you I don't know, you write in and you say, "Hey, I'm having a thunderstorm in Colorado and my power went out and I lost everything that I was working on." Um, maybe the next time that customer writes in, your agent remembers that and they say, "Hey, how'd you make it through that storm?" Do you know what that does? What kind of a feeling that puts into your customer? That's how you turn a customer into an advocate. And like, there's so many different ways you can do that. It doesn't have to be a repeat customer that you talk to all the time. So um, I'll, I'll I'll use an example from Jungle Scout. So, um, Jungle Scout supports Amazon sellers, right? And maybe a customer writes in and they say, "Hey, I'm trying to check my ROI, and I don't know how to do that." And so when you go in and you're checking to see if they have this or that, and all the options are toggled the right way or whatever, you could say, "Oh, hey, I see that you just listed a new product. Congratulations! I hope everything goes well for you." Something like that to just make that personal connection a little bit, or paying attention to your customers. Some customers are very business, very professional, and you need to keep the same tone. But some are very friendly and they might joke around a little bit, and it's okay to throw a GIF out there, right? Or be a little playful, use an emoji, and that goes a long way with people because they feel that personal connection too, which makes them have a connection to your brand.
Yeah, and I think also it's like I like what you said because you should always meet the people at the level they're at. Like if they're very happy,
Hmm.
jovial, you can meet them there. But if they're upset, you have to match the tone as well. But I totally agree with you because I think that customer support is often underlooked or overlooked as like as like a valuable brand building tool because
Yes.
at the end, like they are the mouthpiece of your organization. They are the people that literally speak with your customers. And like you said, if you have the positive experience, if you feel good about this, you're gonna tell other people. Like people, I don't care that like there's a mistake in the software or I get it, but I am upset if they don't answer it properly or if they kind of like disregard me or take too long. Like that creates a negative feeling. And then I'm like, well, there's 100 of you. Like screw you guys, like let me just go
Yeah,
with
for
someone else.
sure. They don't care about
But if
me. Yeah.
but if they do, then it's like, hey, I'm gonna tell a person. When you're
Yeah.
happy, you want to share it. And the same thing
Yeah.
when you're sad, you're gonna share it. So
That's right. Right.
yeah. Uh, so quality assurance is the cornerstone of your approach. What's a common pitfall you see companies make when implementing QA processes in customer support?
A common pitfall when implementing a QA process, I would say not looking not making sure you have a large enough sample size. So if you have agents that are doing 100 interactions a week and you're looking at 2 per week, that's not good quality assurance. We fell into that ourselves. Another another pitfall, I would say, um, not knowing what you're looking for. You have to set forth good rubrics. So if you're just looking to see, did they answer all the questions? That's great. But did they answer the questions correctly? Did they apply ticket tags correctly? Because those ticket tags are data that can help you drive product improvement, or make better support options, knowledge based articles, self service options, things like that. I think that those are the two biggest pitfalls when implementing QA processes. But then another part of that, that's often rolled into QA and it shouldn't be, is quantity over quality. This is not exactly what you asked, but a lot of companies will focus more on those response metrics. So, did you answer quickly? Did you resolve the ticket quickly? And those metrics are important. And I've done a lot of analysis, and I can tell you without a shadow of a doubt, first response time and resolution time, particularly first response time, direct correlation with customer satisfaction. We live in the here and now. We want it right now. And so that drives customer satisfaction. But when you start to focus more on prioritizing those numbers over organic, empathetic customer interactions, that is a huge pitfall. That results in like a robotic service, and it fails to meet customer emotional needs, because that's a real thing, not just the problem they're having or the issue that they don't understand. Like customers, they have emotional needs too, and focusing more on those metrics can definitely decrease your quality of support.
Okay, so I like the definitely the first response time. I think super important. It's like speed to lead, they say in sales,
Hmm.
right? Like if you the quicker you talk to the prospect, the better,
Yep.
the more likely you're going to get the sale. But same thing, like the quicker you talk to them, the sooner they're going to resolve, and the sooner you catch them in their emotional state. But how do you measure like the? Is there a system or a way to manage the like to quantify the empathy approach? Like how would you quantify empathy, or is it just kind of a case by case basis? Does that make sense? What I'm asking?
Yeah. And I think when we built out rubrics in my last quality program, we did look at things like tone, for example. And that's more than just were you empathetic? Did you answer in a professional way, or things like that? But more or less, like, did you match the customer tone? Did you interact with the customer? Did you personalize? And I mean, I don't know that there's a way necessarily to truly quantify that, other than just, like you said, case by case. You're looking into these things and you're saying, hold on a second, here's an opportunity to improve. Now, you can assign a weightage to that as you're building out your quality program. How many points do we deduct for this thing to come up with this calculated score? But there are other ways I think you can measure um, other metrics that you can look at, for example, and maybe that's, you look at advocacy, who interacted with your agent that then went to social media and talked about your brand or talked about their experience, or your online reputation. That's one thing. One program that I drove at Jungle Scout. There are other ways that you can look at how effective your support is for your product and your brand than just those response times.
And I assume, like, in your experience, what's the best way to triage your support, right? Like, do you look at, okay, number one, is the support time there? Number two, is a CSAT score there? And if those are good, then you kind of go a level down into tone, and then you go a level down to, like, what was your process for triaging where the pitfalls are in customer support?
Yeah. So, direct opposition to what I just said, first response time was very high on the list. But one thing that I pushed for a long time, and it's a very important metric in customer support, is one touch resolution. And in order to do that, sometimes you have to think 2 or 3 steps ahead of your customer. So your customer writes in with this problem. I'll go back to the reference that I used a minute ago.
Sorry, what's it
Oh,
called? First time. I've heard this too, but what was it actually called? First
yeah,
time resolution?
yeah, one touch resolution, first touch
One touch, that's what it
resolution.
was.
Yeah, yeah. hmm Um, But the example that I'll share about being this is more proactive support, which is going to drive those one touch resolutions. So first of all, if a customer asks 5 questions, you provide 5 answers, but you might provide 7 or 8 answers, right? Because you're thinking about the next step. So in my previous example, I said, a customer might write in and say, "Hey, how do I check my ROI?" And you can tell them how to check their ROI, but perhaps when you're in their account and you're maybe going to do a screen share, you're doing a video to share with them to say, hey, here's how you go check your ROI. You notice, well, they have products that don't have landed product cost. Well, your ROI is not going to be right because you're missing product cost. So go ahead and tell them that. So don't just answer the question, tell them the next step or what could be another problem. And that's a very basic example, but that's super important.
Got it. No, that makes sense. So I think we touched about this a little bit earlier, but just to kind of flesh it out a little bit. So customer support roles very high stress environments in certain
hmm
cases. And how do you ensure your teams are not only performing, but maintaining high levels of job satisfaction and mental health?
Yeah. I think I mentioned earlier, regular check-ins are super important. I have weekly
And what do these
one-on-one.
check-ins look like, by the
Yeah.
way? Just
Um,
so if anybody wondering what's a good process for it, and how do you know if the check-in did its job? Like, what's the goal for the check-in as well?
mhm. Um, so when I have check-ins, each one of us has an agenda, but it is my personal belief as a leader that the check-in is for the team member. That is their space and their time with you. And what we talk about is, what are you working on right now? Because in customer support, maybe it's not always tickets. Maybe you have, SWAT teams that are working on escalations, or maybe you have projects that are going on, like you're auditing your knowledge base for accuracy, or you're updating records, or whatever the case may be. So we talk about, what projects are you working on? What's your workload look like? What challenges or issues are you facing? What feedback do you have for me? What feedback do you have for the team? And it goes both ways. And so you asked how do I know if these are successful? So action items may be assigned, or there may be trends identified. So maybe you have a disgruntled team member for whatever reason, and they come in and they're telling you these things, and you work together to resolve them. As far as like metrics from the check-in, nothing like that. It's more of a personal, professional experience. One-on-one time with your leader, but resolving those obstacles for team members and helping them and just making sure that they're happy at work. And um, I know this is going to sound very cliche when I say it, but I highly encourage work life balance. And so I regularly check vacation logs. And if I notice that, it's June and someone hasn't taken any time off, I will tell them you need to book some time off. And if they don't, I have been known to ask a team member to book time while we're on the call. Put it in the calendar. I don't care if it's just a long weekend that you put in. You're burning out, you're stressed out, you need to take some time for yourself. you know I even threatened an employee one time, if they didn't get off of Slack, I was going to deactivate their account. I didn't have the authority to do that. I was just trying to make a point for them to get offline. It was not their shift. They were working long hours. So I highly encourage that, to make sure that they're maintaining their mental health. And then I also mentioned feedback, both directions, extremely important to me, because I can't fix what I don't know is wrong. That is, the people that have boots on the ground, that are in the trenches every single day, they see things that, leadership might not see when you're diving into the metrics, or you're working on, you know, building out the holistic team direction. And so, encouraging that sort of open door policy helps me to identify concerns, or hurdles, stressors more quickly. And then you still have the team members. I have been fortunate this has just worked in my previous teams, and I have people today that still come to me for support on issues that they're having in their current role, and we don't work together anymore.
Wow.
But if you, yeah, it's I've been fortunate with my teams, but for those team members that don't feel comfortable maybe raising their hand or even speaking up in that one-to-one situation, I had a virtual suggestion box at my last company, and it was anonymous. We used a Google form, and anyone could drop anything in and say, hey, I think you need to look at this, or this is not working well for me. So it gave people the opportunity to share feedback or potential solutions without necessarily having the stigma of saying, I have this thing to say.
I like that virtual suggestion box. Interesting.
Hmm.
So it seems like, yeah, it seems like a lot of your strategy is like just genuinely caring about the person and what's best for them.
Hmm.
And once you show that, they're actually open up a little bit because maybe that is like a challenge, like especially if someone who's more of a manager rather than a leader. And what I mean by that is like if they're just focused on the numbers, they don't really care about the people, then you won't be able to the open up the people's hearts enough for them to actually speak
Right.
what actually needs to be done. Because the manager doesn't see what's going on, and and if he's tyrannical, we see this happen like all throughout history. They're tyrannical. No one wants to talk to them. They're just going to tell you what you want
Absolutely
to hear
not.
and then move on. Right.
That's right. That's right.
That's probably why democracies work better than dictatorships. Now that I think about it, because you can have more ideas are more easily exchanged.
Yeah. Crowdsourcing.
Crowdsourcing, exactly. What has been the most challenging project you've led in your career, and what made it so difficult?
So, for several years when I worked at Jungle Scout, we focused solely on the SMB customer. And then we built out an enterprise solution. I was tasked with building that foundational support team. And so I had to not only learn a new product, but build out onboarding and training for this new product start to finish, hire both the first enterprise customer support leadership and customer support reps. And then the hardest part was now bringing these new relationships to the table. So with the SMB customer, you have the customer who goes to your site and they purchase, and then they have post-purchase support if they need it, right? With an enterprise client, now we have tossed in sales to the mix. Um, we've tossed in CSMs, CSRs. How do you know where each role starts and stops, and how do you know where they overlap? So we had to I had to build out a lot of very distinct roles and responsibilities, but then also understand how they overlap with sales, how they overlap with CSMs. When does the handoff occur? What does the CSM continue to handle? What does the support agent handle? That was the most challenging project of my career to date because I had no knowledge of the enterprise customer. You can't even speak to them the same way that you speak to SMB customer. So it was still customer support, but every single aspect of it was different, on top of learning a brand new product that was much more intricate than our already very analytical tool.
So having no experience building out this large tool, building out a new product, and having to collaborate with all these different teams and functions, is that what kind of brought out most of the challenge of it?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's time consuming, but it's not difficult to learn a new product. And once you learn it, it's time consuming, but it's not difficult to build out a ramp plan or an onboarding or training plan, right? But I think understanding the customer, how to interact with that customer, and what they expect from you is very different than your small, medium business customer. And then those relationships, I think that was the hardest part because there was often, some scenarios where, well, I thought this was your job. Well, I thought I thought you already took care of this. And so in the beginning, working out those kinks and finding this cohesive flow and this cohesive handoff process was very challenging.
Got it. Got it. Um, what was your worst experience in customer support?
Oh my gosh. Um, I have had so many. um, I think abusive customers. I have so many examples of abusive customers. Very, very early in the first maybe year of my career in customer support, I had a customer that um, would not stop attacking me, and I just kept maintaining my composure. And I lost it. I was very, like I said, I was very, very young in my customer support career, and I told him this was not at Jungle Scout, by the way. This was my first customer support job, but it was also in e-commerce, and this person was attacking me and using the F word, and I think even said, I don't remember if it was my mother or my grandmother. Hope hope they die, and all this kind of stuff. And I wound up telling him that I something to the effect of, I hope you don't kiss your mother with that mouth, and you're never going to make any money online. So shut your laptop and throw it out the window. So looking back on that, that was a really, really terrible experience. But I did learn a little bit from that, and I never allowed it. Once I moved into leadership, I did not allow my team members to go through that same experience, because no matter how hard I tried or what solution I gave to this person, um, just kept reopening the ticket, just kept on and kept on and kept on. This went on for hours, maybe even a couple of days. I can't remember, as many years ago. But I don't allow that to happen with my team members. So anyone that curses at my team members, they one warning, and if they do it again, I will jump in. I will tell the agent to step out. I take over the case. I don't let them have any part of it. And I will tell the customer, if you continue to treat team members this way, I will ban you from submitting public cases or tickets, and you'll have to reach out to me directly. Um, but yeah, I think that was my worst experience, not just from the customer to me, part of it, but the way that I reacted early on. It's a very, very bad experience.
Yeah, I can only imagine just like taking all that abuse from a person that doesn't even see you. So clearly it wasn't about the product. Like clearly something happened,
Mm-mm,
and
mm-mm,
then this is just his one outlet or her one outlet, and
mm-hmm.
it's sad to say because you have to be, because not only do you have to support the customer, you always almost have to be a psychologist at the same time.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. So AI is the big new buzzword, the big new thing in customer support, and basically within any industry. So I just want to say, like, I want to ask first, are you using AI in your current role, or how are you using it, and or how have you used it in the past?
Yeah. So a little, not so much in my current role, but in previous roles, we did use AI chatbots to answer very common questions or self-serve solutions for customers. And then um, basically just to drive efficiency. So removing one touch from the agent, maybe even two, and then allowing the agent to step in. That's how we used it in the past with the chatbot. So there was always a clear path to an agent. Never did we have a chatbot where you'd get in a loop and you're typing human agent. None of that. We always had an option to say, speak to an agent, but used AI in those chatbots in hopes of either allowing self-service, more clear path to self-service for the customer, or eliminating a couple of touches, so by the time the agent does enter the conversation, it is a one-touch resolution. It's like, oh, boom, here, I've got your response, let's go, let's move on to the next one, we've got a satisfied customer. But not using it so much at the moment. In my current role, we are looking at a solution. um, the solution that we are looking at is not to take the place of agents. It's to help agents create knowledge articles from successfully solved cases to help improve response and resolution times moving forward. So it's driving efficiency, but not replacing the human interaction.
Have you so I think chatbots have been around for a while, but I think now like the whole thing is with generative AI and all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
Have you seen or have you talked to anyone in the industry or who's implemented some sort of generative AI customer support solution where it's just you type it out what you're doing and then have you heard of like Ada or VoiceFlow or any of these companies?
Mm-mm, no, I haven't. But when I left Jungle Scout, we were working on something internally, and it was generative, but it was in the very very beta phases when we left, and it was to take what the customer was writing and not just return results based on keywords, but look into their account and surface metrics and analytics for them so that they don't have to go and dive in. They could ask a specific question, and it would bring forth some information for them.
What do you believe is the balance between like AI technology and the human touch and maintaining customer satisfaction?
Um, I think, like I said, I think using AI to automate those routine tasks, or in the case of the knowledge articles, to drive efficiency, maybe even to resolve those quick and easy tickets, like how do I cancel, or where do I go to get a refund, or how do I get a refund, things like that, but not take the place. I don't think it should ever, in my opinion, take the place of human interaction for like complex or true issues. Um, if you want to, use AI to route your tickets, or like I mentioned, those routine tasks, that's great. But um, I think even now that I've said, like, how do I do this thing? I think even a simple how to question can benefit from a human interaction. And again, I go back to the example that I gave earlier about ROI. So if you ask AI, how do I see the ROI? Maybe it can generate a response, or it can look into your account and notice some things. But if you've got that human action interaction where they step in and say, you know maybe you have a product cost here, but it doesn't look right. Did you really source this product for 3 cents? It's this brand new automobile. There's no way you source this for 3 cents. It's impacting your ROI. And I think AI can get there, but again, you're going to lose that brand ambassador, opportunity there with AI. It's just interacting with a robot, and it's not creating that connection, that emotion.
Hmm. Do you think so? Do you think that with AI, as it gets better and better, it will replace or just reduce the amount of agents that we need or support?
I'm hopeful that it's the latter, but I feel that it will replace the way that a lot of companies view customer support. And let's be honest, it's a cost, right?
Yeah.
A lot of companies view customer support as a cost, and you can go look at the budget and see, they might have $1 million or more sitting over in your marketing budget, and then you've got a budget of $6,000 for customer support, and so unfortunately, I do think that AI will replace a lot of roles eventually.
Hmm. Yeah, that's so that'll be interesting to see how that happens in the next couple of few years. So based on what you're seeing now and in your current position, you think it's going to replace it?
Yeah, I do. It's all the buzz. Will it be effective? Will it be a mistake? We'll have to see what happens. I personally think that it's a mistake if you want to make those connections. But you can go on any of these discussion boards. I'm a member of some professional um, discussion forums, and I network with peers, and I'm on these boards, and I watch these webinars, and everyone is talking about AI. Everyone in support is talking about AI, and a lot of your agents are talking about it too because they're fearful. But it could be it could be a thing, Paul. If I'm being honest,
Yeah, no, that's for sure. And I think it's not just the customer support industry. I think it's many industries as a
it
whole.
is. Hmm.
Yeah. So if
Yeah.
there's customer support companies out there, they better find a way to integrate AI, right? That's
Hmm.
the
Yep.
or may build their own product or build their own solution. Um,
Hmm.
Yeah, well, before that, you have worked with our team, the Talent Trellis team, in the past, and with our customer support solution. So I just want to know, like, how was your experience working with Hamza and the Talent Trellis team?
Yeah, so that experience was my first time working with a team like Talent Trellis, and I'll be honest with you, I wasn't so sure about it going into the process. I thought, no, I like to have my own team members. I like to train them. I like to onboard them. All of these things. I was wrong. So I had an excellent experience, and one thing that absolutely just blew my mind about the Talent Trellis team is how quickly you had someone ready. So you know, if we had someone drop off, you always had someone ready to just step in and fill those shoes. There's high turnover in support. It is a hard job. We did talk about it, and attrition is real. And Talent Trellis always had someone ready to step in, but then also proactively had a lot of meetings with Hamza where he's like, "Hey, let's talk about the next 3 months. How many do you expect to hire in the next 3 months? So I can go ahead and start onboarding these people so they're ready to hit the ground running." And so that eliminated a lot. Like at Jungle Scout, the ramp time just to get to you know fully owning tier 1 support, I would say was like 12, 14, 16 weeks in some cases. And with Talent
Wow.
Trellis, yeah, we had people that were stepping in. Now they still were new and maybe needed coaching here and there, but it eliminated weeks and weeks off of onboarding, and so we didn't lose that productivity. It was a great experience. Yeah.
Well, that's really, really good to hear. And how
Mhm.
satisfied you with the response time to your inquiries and your issues?
Oh, I don't think Hamza ever sleeps. I would message him on Slack, and it was just like no time I was getting a response. So I was astounded by the communication and response time for sure.
So that's what I was going to say. That was my next question. How would you rate the clarity and professionalism of the communication from our support team?
Same. I really don't have any complaints. I told you I wasn't happy about it, and I came into that new role thinking we won't have this partnership for long. And once I started working with Talent Trellis, I was like, we are never getting rid of Talent Trellis. Yeah,
That's
it's
amazing.
good.
That's great to hear. Um,
Yeah,
and how would you rate like the courtesy and friendliness of the support team and of Hamza?
yeah, 10 out of 10. I'm telling you, everything was great. No complaints.
And how would you rate the overall value of the customer support service and the trust and safety team that we provided compared to the actual cost of it?
15 out of 10. Um, I think it was a great experience. And I'm not just saying that because we're talking today. Like you guys really changed my mind on the topic of, outsourcing and the way you treat your team and the value. Amazing. You guys are doing a great job. You've really got something going there.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
Mhm,
And last
mhm.
last question here. How likely are you to recommend our customer support solution to other businesses?
10 out of 10. I've actually already recommended you to other businesses.
Oh, really? Oh,
Yep,
that's
I
really,
have.
really great to hear. I would love to interested to hear from them.
Okay. We'll talk about
Awesome.
that when we're not live.
Yeah, yeah, for sure, for sure. Okay, I got a couple more questions over here, and we're almost at time. But
Okay.
let's see what we got here. How would you? Okay, here's a good one. How do you approach mentoring and developing future leaders in customer support?
That's a really good question. Lots of different ways. I, I, I have these conversations often with all of my direct reports, and the most important part, I think, is to understand their interests and aspirations and help them build out a development plan. And sometimes that's not just at work, but outside of work too. For example, I love reading leadership books. I had a manager one time, and we had the best conversations. But I might come to him with a problem or something that I was working on. I'm a little bit stuck, and he always had a book that he could recommend to me. So I recommend a lot of those books to people that aspire to move into leadership. Um, Cross training opportunities, hands on learning, always providing coaching and my support, but then also allowing like shadow sessions with me. So coming into have had a lot of team members that, I say, start coming to this cross-functional meeting with me, and I want you to sit and observe for X amount of time, 1 month, 3 months, whatever it may be. And then I'm going to stop being a contributor and I'm going to move into the consumer position, and I'm going to let you contribute for the customer support team. So allowing them the opportunity to watch and learn, then speak and learn while I'm there to provide feedback. And then maybe I just let them own it and then I step away. And so then allowing for that experience through different levels of autonomy as they grow in their career.
That makes sense. That makes total sense. And one of the things I want to ask before, but I totally forgot. So, what are the key qualities you look for when hiring customer support roles? And how do you ensure those individuals align with your team's values?
Um, Key qualities, empathy for sure, um, strong communication skills, adaptability is very, very important. Um, and then to ensure the individuals align with values, high emotional intelligence, low ego. That is very important, particularly when you're in a global team. Um, when people interact differently, watching that ego is very important, and self awareness, being very aware of when the ego is getting involved. And the ego is much, much more. It's one of my favorite books. I'll plug it. Is No Ego by Cy Wakeman, I think. Um, Ego is so much more than just, patting yourself on the back. A lot of people, when they think about ego, they think about that, but that's not all ego is. So like, when you're in a global team and somebody responds to you, it's written, you have no tone, you can't see facial expressions, and maybe there's a cultural difference. So not being able to say, I've had people say to me, they don't like me, they only responded with one word, so I'm not going to help them anymore. Whoa, step back, get your ego out of the situation.
Mm.
Maybe that's just how they communicate. Maybe this is not about you at all. Maybe they were super busy. Maybe they were on a call. Maybe they were in a chat. There's so many things. Why is it automatically about you? Let's drop the ego and let's think about this holistically as a team. Super, super important on remote and global teams.
I think the scary thing about that is like people don't even realize like that is ego. Like that's what that
Hmm.
is.
Right. Yeah.
They just think,
Excellent
oh
book.
well, you know what I mean? Like what is yeah, this is actually what's it called? No ego? I'm gonna check that out.
No ego.
No
Yeah.
ego.
And another thing I used to tell people too is, don't start conversations with I think. If you're going to tell me about someone else or an interaction or whatever, do not start with I think. I don't want to know what you think. I want you to talk to me with data, with metrics. Tell me, not necessarily like I think we should do this or that thing. When we're talking about people, I don't want to hear what you think. I want us to step outside of that, step outside of you, and let's look holistically and let's talk about it that way.
That makes so much more sense. Yeah. So empathy, no ego, and what was that third one
Hmm.
you said again?
Um, Self awareness, I think,
Self
high
awareness. Yeah.
emotional. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah. No, that's very true because like you can be empathetic but also have a big ego, or you can be. But if you're not
Hmm.
self aware, you can have a big ego as long as you're self aware because then you can kind of quell it. But if you're not
Yeah.
self aware, that's very dangerous. Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
We got like a couple more minutes here, so I'm just going to finish off with two more questions. What has been your proudest moment as a leader in the customer support field?
Mm. I have had I've had a lot of specific interactions, projects, achievements that I'm really proud of. Um, I've driven a lot of improvement in metrics, particularly at Jungle Scout, and I'm very proud of those projects and outcomes. But I think my proudest moments again are around the people that have been on my teams. So I've had I've had a few people say to me, "You're the best manager I've ever had." I had one person tell me, I have learned more from you than I have learned from anyone in my entire life. And I'm like, whoa, that is bold. That is big. And that is a huge compliment for any leader. And then just like watching my team members, it's such a mixed bag of emotions, but watching my team members grow out of customer support and into other areas of the organization or becoming leaders of their own teams, I think those are my proudest moments in my career.
Wow. So just watching other people grow, watching them succeed, and
Hmm.
knowing that through your influence and through your leadership, you help them get to
Yeah,
the next level. Wow.
yeah,
I can see how that would be like very, very fulfilling.
it is. Yeah, that's definitely the best part of leadership and support.
Stacey, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. I learned a ton, and I know we could probably talk for another hour or two, but just to save the length of the podcast is good for an hour. We can have definitely have you on back again. Do you
Sure.
have any other final statements or any final messages you want to hear leave the viewers with?
Um, I guess if I maybe think about leadership, I would say, um, no, Paul, my whole brain just went blank. I had something to say and it just completely fell right out of my ears. I don't even remember what I was going to say now. I'm sorry.
No worries, no worries. Yeah,
It is
no, we
gone.
can cut that last part out.
Yeah, I had something just so enlightening to say to you, and it is gone. I can only think about how thirsty I am. I'm so sorry.
No worries, no worries. Well, Stacy, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. Really, really appreciate. I know there's some definitely some gold nuggets in here that other people will find very useful. And if you're comfortable and if you want people to connect with you, where would they be able to find you?
Yeah, you can find me on LinkedIn, Stacy Swift on LinkedIn. Um, yeah, I think that's probably the best place.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much, Stacy, for coming on, and have a great day.
Thanks. You too.